New York City, arguably one of the most inspiring places in the world, filled with dreams and ambition so large that it can't even sleep. I wish that were the reason that I couldn't sleep. With thoughts of skyscrapers, sounds of honking taxis, and visions of Carrie Bradshaw dancing in our heads, it can be easy to forget the families of the city, the ones living day to day with such a picturesque backdrop. Well, on the evening of October 5th, 2012, an unexpected nightmare would unfold inside a luxury apartment on the Upper West Side, a nightmare that would leave a family shattered and a city horrified. Kevin and Marina Krim were living a life that they had always dreamed of. She was a well-educated and creative professional, while he was a Harvard graduate and former football star. The two met at an Italian restaurant in San Francisco one night, and the rest was history. By 2003, the pair were married, officially becoming the Crims before welcoming a daughter named Lucia 3 years later. An additional 3 years brought their second daughter, Nessie, and an exciting job opportunity at CNBC for Kevin, the only caveat being that they'd have to relocate to New York City. Though the new job opportunity afforded them a high-end apartment just across from Central Park, this meant that the women of the family had to sacrifice time with Kevin as he was off working a lot. This left Marina not only a little bit lonely, but in need of childcare during the few hours per week she dedicated to teaching art classes, and especially so after she gave birth to her son Leo. To pick up the slack, Marina thought a nanny would be a helpful addition to the household. Enter Yoselyn Ortega, a 50-year-old woman from the Dominican Republic who seemed perfect for the role of the Crim family nanny. Yoselyn had been referred to Marina by her sister Celia, who also worked in childcare around the city. After welcoming her into their home, what began as a professional arrangement quickly turned into something much more meaningful than any of them would have expected. Yoselyn immediately took to the kids like they were her own, and they absolutely loved her. It wasn't long before she was like a real part of their family. Not only would they cover the expenses of her trips back to the Dominican Republic to see her son, but even went as far as traveling with her to meet her relatives. It was as if they were one big happy family. But behind the warm smiles and loving care was a deeply troubled woman. Yoselyn Ortega was born on May 1st, 1962 in Santiago de los Caballeros and was the second youngest of 8 children. Her parents ran a bodega with help from all of the kids, and it did pretty well in providing for everyone. But sadly, Yoselyn's life was marked by tragedy pretty early on. As a teenager, she lost her younger sister suddenly, a trauma that sent her spiraling into a deep depression. She became a recluse, telling her friends and family that her head constantly hurt and that she had started to hear voices screaming, telling her to hurt herself and others. She tried her best to ignore them, but it became such a consistent problem that she would awaken to them in the middle of the night. This went on for a while until the hallucinations were no longer just auditory, but visual. She described shadow people creeping around and stalking her as they told her to commit heinous acts. Being that mental health wasn't really talked about in these times and the culture, Yoselyn knew that if she sought help, she would be called crazy. So she only shared her struggles with a few close family members. Otherwise, she felt that she couldn't seek help without being locked up with the key thrown away, so she tried her best to ignore these hallucinations that grew increasingly real and disruptive to her daily life. Attempting to live her life as normally as possible, Yoselyn went on to college where she completed an accounting degree. She eventually found a man to whom she got married, and the couple had a son they'd call Jesus. Unfortunately, the marriage was not meant to last and ended in divorce after 4 years. Struggling financially to keep herself and her young son afloat, Yoselyn decided that she wanted to move to the United States in pursuit of better job opportunities. Luckily, one of her sisters, Celia, had already moved to New York and planted some roots. But unfortunately, Yoselyn would have to leave Jesus behind with family in the Dominican Republic while she worked on building a stable foundation for them. Like her sister, Yoselyn worked in New York as a housekeeper and would regularly send money home to support Jesus. It was really difficult for her being away from him, but she made a concerted effort to speak with him on the phone every day and tried to visit him each month with an ultimate goal of living together comfortably in the States. In 2004, year, she finally became a citizen of the US, but there must have been some complications with Jesus moving, so she returned to the DR in 2008, closing the gap between the mother and son. Not long after returning home, Yoselyn was unexpectedly sent into another deep depression when a close friend of hers took his own life on the balcony of her childhood home. The tragedy struck so much anxiety about all of the horrible things that could possibly happen to her loved ones that at some point she would only allow Jesus to leave the house if he needed to go to school. If she heard any typical noises outside, like a car driving past or a dog barking, she would drop everything she was doing, find Jesus, and rush him to hide under the bed to protect him. I'm not sure how urban or rural an area they lived in, but nonetheless, I'm sure it was very taxing and confusing for them both. On top of that, the financial situation was starting to get rough again, which prompted Yoselyn to return to New York for work. Here, her sister Celia had already put in good word with her with Marina, though she did exaggerate her work experience. Sure, Yoselyn was a mother herself, but she spent a lot of time away from her son and had no actual nannying experience. Marina, having no reason not to trust Celia, gladly welcomed Yoselyn into her home, and for a while it felt as if she were the perfect fit. The kids are happy and taken care of, the parents feel comfortable and relieved of a little bit of stress, and Yoselyn is pretty well taken care of. Right? Well, not exactly. An acquaintance had offered Yoselyn the opportunity to stay at an apartment that they owned in the Bronx, which would give her the space to bring over her son from the Dominican Republic. This felt like Yoselyn had hit the lottery, and all the sacrifices she'd made during Jesus' childhood were finally paying off. Not only would she finally have a stable place of her own to call home, but she would be sharing it with the most important person in her world. Unfortunately, this dream quickly turned into a nightmare when the acquaintance returned unexpectedly and kicked the duo out, and the financial constraints would force them back into Celia's Hamilton Heights apartment. Since Yoselyn finally had a place of her own and expected to be there for a while, she had invested quite a bit of money into this place, which is reasonable and frustrating. Now, getting kicked out, she incurred even more moving costs, and when everything was said and done, she had very little money left once returning to her sister's place. In the Hamilton Heights apartment building, she began a side hustle of selling makeup and jewelry to tenants of the building. This entire situation was devastating and took a toll on her in various ways. Neighbors attested to her rapid weight loss and physical aging due to stress. She told a friend she felt like she was losing her mind and even took it upon herself to finally visit a psychiatrist. During this time, Yoselyn also asked Marina to work additional hours, to which Marina responded yes, that she could stick around a little bit longer each day to do extra housework. While this was something, Yoselyn was admittedly upset that she wasn't offered a raise from her $18 an hour pay, seeing as she was in a particularly sticky financial situation. October 25th, 2012. Crim was away on a business trip to San Francisco. That evening, Marina had arranged for Yoselyn to take Leo and Lulu to her ballet class while she took Nessie to swimming lessons at YMCA. The plan was for the two groups of them to meet up afterward at the studio, but when Marina arrived, she quickly discovered that they had never shown up to the class at all. Concerned, she called repeatedly with no answer. At 5:35 p.m., Marina returned home, and the apartment was dark as well as way too quiet. She called out, but there was no response. A sinking feeling took over. Maybe they had just gone out for a walk, but things still seemed really strange. She rushed downstairs to ask the doorman if he had seen them, and he had, just earlier, going upstairs. Marina and Nessie hurried back upstairs to take another look around, and upon approaching the bathroom, she noticed that the door was closed, with a sliver of light peeking out from underneath. She pushed open the door, and her world shattered. 6-year-old Lulu and 2-year-old Leo lie in the bathtub, their small bodies covered in blood. Standing beside them was Yoselyn Ortega, barely clinging to life after slashing her wrists and then plunging a kitchen knife into her neck and throat. Marina's screams echoed through the building. The superintendent and his 10-year-old son rushed to help, bearing witness to the grisly scene before calling 911 and trying their best to calm the hysterical mother. First responders carried out the children on stretchers, desperately trying to save them. It was so bad that when police were trying to figure out exactly what happened, Marina was screaming so uncontrollably that she had to be taken to a nearby hospital for sedation. Tragically, both kids succumbed to their wounds before reaching the hospital. And meanwhile, Kevin Crim was returning from his business trip. Upon landing at JFK Airport, he found multiple voicemails from Marina, just unintelligible screams of grief that immediately sent him into a confused panic. When he deboarded the plane, airport police broke the news to him and he collapsed on the spot. He was rushed to a nearby hospital before finally reuniting with his equally as devastated wife. How could someone they'd grown close to over the years and considered part of the family do this to children that they were collectively raising? Yoselyn was taken to New York Presbyterian Hospital, where it was found that she stabbed herself so violently that she'd broken some of her vertebrae with the force of the knife. She underwent surgery and was placed in a medically induced coma. Upon awakening, she remained in a catatonic state for quite a while, unwilling or unable to respond to anything or anyone. After some time, she later admitted that Lulu had fought back, which was evidenced by over 30 defensive wounds. Leo, who has been asleep, was awakened by the attack and had his throat slit from behind. After undergoing some tests, Yoselyn was found mentally competent to stand trial, which meant that she would have to stand before a jury of her peers for 2 counts of first-degree murder. In the meantime, she was kept in the New York City Psychiatric Hospital without bail as she awaited her trial. Yoselyn's defense attorney, Valerie Van Leer Greenberg, argued that she had been, quote, touched by the devil. Prosecutors, however, pointed out that Yoselyn knew exactly what she was doing, as evidenced by her actions, leaving her cell phone at home, gathering her important personal documents, and leaving them out, all preparing for the murder-suicide. Kevin and Marina's emotional testimonies moved the courtroom to tears. Their surviving daughter, Nessie, longed for her siblings, and their younger sons, born after the tragedy, would never have the opportunity to meet their brother and sister, Leo and Lulu. Despite a grueling 8-week trial, Ortega showed no remorse. On April 18, 2018, she was convicted of first-degree murder, with Valerie Van Leer Greenberg stating that the jury was simply swayed by emotion rather than fact. But one juror has said that she can't even stand to take a bath because it gives her flashbacks of the horrific crime scene photos that she had to witness in court. As horrible as that is, the Crims felt even more supported by their community with such responses. They weren't the only ones affected and hurting from the tragic loss of their children. On May 14th, she received the maximum sentence, life without parole, which was happily supported by the Crim couple. The judge called Yoselyn pure evil, stating that she, or at least someone in her family, should have sought help before it got to the point that it did, especially since they knew about her mental health struggles and hallucinations. But from this unspeakable tragedy, the Crims found a way to bring light. They championed Lulu and Leo's law to prevent false child care references, and they also founded the Lulu and Leo Fund, dedicated to supporting creative learning for disadvantaged children. Though nothing can ease the pain of that fateful night, Marina and Kevin continue to honor their children's memories through love, resilience, and a mission to help others. The story of Lulu and Leo Krim is definitely heartbreaking, but it also shows the strength, remembrance, and unwavering power of the Crim family. With that, we've just about come to the end of today's case, and I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to stop, give this video a click, and a watch, especially if you made it this far. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see similar content of true crime, cults, strange occurrences, conspiracy theories, things like that, go ahead and click the subscribe button down below if you want, and I'll see you back here next time. If you have any recommendations for cases you'd like me to cover in the future, go ahead and leave them down below in the comments, and I will go ahead and see you in the next one. Bye!